Tibetans. A very warm and hearty Tashidele to all my Tibetan brothers and sisters who have gathered here, and especially to our supporters who are here with us today to commemorate and observe this very significant 63rd Tibetan Uprising Day here in London. My name is Tenzin Sangmo. I'm from Bristol. I'm a registered nurse in the NHS and a Tibetan who always stands up for justice and fairness, as I strongly believe injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. First of all, before I start with anything else, I want to share my sadness and solidarity with the people of Ukraine in light of the unprovoked and barbaric aggression and invasion from Russia. In the 21st century, a time where we prioritize the use of dialogue to resolve problems, seeing many innocent civilians losing their lives and public infrastructures being destroyed is heartbreaking. I want to say out loud, with my hands on my heart, we stand with you, and we are praying for you. Tibetan people faced the same fate 70 years ago under the brutal and illegal Chinese occupation. At the time in 1959, there was no social media to spread information about horrifying events taking place, and no accessibility to the humanitarian support that we see today's world. Our struggle still continues. The inhuman torture, human rights abuses, and environmental destructions in Tibet has not stopped yet. The situation has worsened and is worsening with the ongoing cultural genocide and the sinicization of Tibet by Xi Jinping's regime. I want to thank the Tibetan community here in UK for giving me this opportunity to address the event here in front of every one of you. In remembrance of the undoubted bravery, courage, and valor of our Tibetan martyrs who sacrificed their life for the freedom and sovereignty of Tibet, I salute and I say, you all will never be forgotten. The flame you left is in me and in all of us, and will keep on burning for generations to come. Today, 10th March, on this day in 1959, Tibet was forcefully invaded by the Chinese military regime. Thousands of Tibetans surrounded Nubulinka, the summer place of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, in defiance of the illegal Chinese occupation. The fear of His Holiness being assassinated or abducted by Chinese officials triggered nationwide protests, which culminated in the Tibetan National Uprising in Lhasa. During and after the uprising, the Chinese government brutally cracked down on Tibetan resistance, massacred and fired indiscriminately at thousands of our Tibetan men, women, children, monks and nuns. The scene was like what we see today in the Ukraine war zone. There were rivers of blood, corpses everywhere on the streets, people lying wounded with no medical assistance, and thousands of our monasteries were demolished, and our holy Buddhist scriptures were burned. Those who survived were arrested. Were put in dungeons, tortured, hanged, were killed mercilessly. Those who escaped Tibet ran short of food, with no safe passage to India, and many died on the border. These stories were painful and heartbreaking to hear. My late parents and some of your parents also went through such treacherous experiences, hardship and suffering. These are sad but real stories. The thousands of Tibetan women, led by Pamukusang, who protested the regime on the 12th of March, show us the courage of Tibetan women in our struggle for freedom. His Holiness, at the age of 23 at that time, was forced to flee to India, with thousands of Tibetans followed him. Tibet, even today, suffers harsh human rights abuses. When the 2008 Olympics took place in Beijing, the Chinese government promised to improve the human rights situation inside Tibet, but nothing has improved. Tibetans continue to suffer. This year, although there was a diplomatic boycott of the Beijing 2022 Olympics from several countries with mounting pressure from different organizations. The situation inside Tibet has remained the same and even worsened. 158 Tibetans have immolated since 2009 to protest the brutal Chinese occupation. Sinicization of Tibetan culture and religion, imposing laws to send Tibetan children to Chinese boarding school, enforcing cohesive assimilation policies, and the recently reported self-immolation of a famous 25-year-old Tibetan singer, Sangmo, on 25th February in front of the Potala Palace, all demonstrate that the Chinese occupation and oppression is severe and unbearable for Tibetans. The imprisonment of Gendon Hunduk, for instance, for raising questions about the Sinicization of Tibetan Buddhism, imprisonment of singer Hunduk Thakpa for singing Black Hat song, and detention of Rinchen Ki, a Tibetan teacher at Shengtu Takse Middle School in Tibet, whose whereabouts has been unknown, are the stories which show that the basic freedom of expression and right to information are suppressed in Tibet. In many villages across Tibet Autonomous Region, Chinese authorities have indefinitely installed intensive surveillance programs which infringes and restricts the fundamental right to freedom of expression, movement, peaceful assembly, religious gatherings, and privacy. This indefinite surveillance scheme's intention is to suppress the basic freedom of Tibetans and nothing less than a gross violation of human rights. It breaks the Universal Declaration of Human Rights Act enshrined in China's own laws and international laws. China has destroyed the traditional livelihood of our Tibetan nomads too. Our nomads have been displaced from their habitat to allow the Chinese government to exploit Tibet's environmental resources with mining and extraction projects and construction of major dams running across Tibet. This poses a huge threat to Tibetan's population and environment. Tibet's clean air environment was excavated for mineral resources such as copper, lithium, gold, uranium, etc. The continuous mining, damming, and deforestation has made Tibet prone to floods and earthquakes. Tibet's river feed 1 billion people throughout Asian subcontinent every day. But China's control over our waters give them a significant geostrategic advantage over neighboring countries. China now poses a threat not only to Tibet, but also to its neighbor, India, and to the modern democratic world. Today, on this day, I want to urge global leaders to put more pressure on China to condemn the environmental destruction resulting in climate crisis and the human rights abuses to the people of Tibet and also to other ethnic groups who are suffering under the same oppressive regime. I also call for the strengthening of our coalition among Tibetans, Uyghurs, Southern Mongolians, Hong Kong, and Taiwanese human rights organizations to put a unilateral pressure and to plan effective future campaigns to hold China accountable for what they have done to our people and to our land for their crime against humanity. I also urge world leaders to urgently work towards the return of His Holiness the Dalai Lama to Tibet with safe diplomatic security arrangements so that His Holiness' dreams will be fulfilled. To our Tibetan brothers and sisters all around the world, times have changed. We must all take our own individual and collective responsibilities to preserve our rich and unique identity, language, and culture, and not to sit in our own comfort zone. This is the time. Like Ukrainians, we Tibetans must also rise with bravery and courage to defend, protect, and fight for our own country and for the freedom of Tibetans inside Tibet suffering under the brutal authoritarian regime. We must not ignore. We must not rest. We must not blame others. We must rise up, rise even stronger, because Tibet matters to me and to every one of you here. We are Tibetans. We share the same stories, the same tears, the same pain. We are Tibetans. No matter which province you are born into, no matter what you believe in, remember, we are one. We must keep this flame alive to move forward as one Tibetan. with our united force and the prime goal of freedom for our brothers and sisters in Tibet. I pray one day there will be a fall of the Chinese regime and Tibet will be free. Until then, I call John F. Kennedy, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. To the Chinese government, I want to say, Tibet will never ever die. And our children and our children's children will rise up stronger and even more courageous and committed until freedom is restored in Tibet. Our younger generation will keep the flame burning. To conclude, I want to thank our TCP Council and all the organizers of the today events and also the campaign manager for keeping the Tibet causes alive and keeping our activism going with collaborative efforts here in UK. And also to all the global Tibetan support groups, thank you for your hard work, support, and campaign towards bringing Tibetan causes to the global stage. Well done, and thank you to you all. And lastly, with our unwavering faith, respect, and love for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, may His Holiness the Dalai Lama live long and may Tibet be free one day very soon. Thank you. Pregala!